Come with me on an idle ride as we watch The Last of Us together.
Can't be any worse out there. Can it? I can take care of myself.
How many close calls have we had?
Ellie! Stop! Stop!
Fucking touch me!
It's okay. It's me. It's me. It's me. Look. Sweet Jesus.
Doctor?
What are you doing in here? This is our future. Think of all the lives we'll save.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And no matter what, you keep finding something to fight for.
There is a trigger warning for this episode. At around 25 minutes and 25 seconds, we discuss rape in movies. So if this is a trigger for you, please skip about 3 minutes and that conversation is over. Welcome to Idle Ride, a podcast dedicated to casual enthusiasm for all things pop culture. I'm Marcy, your host, here with my chosen brother Paul to discuss the second episode of The Last of Us TV series titled Infected. Once again, our live reactions to the show will be available as bonus episodes, but I'll be including some of the best of our reactions in this episode. The previous episode was super long, and this episode actually is a more reasonable length episode. It starts off in Jakarta in 2003, and it is kind of funny that they start there because now we finally see why they mentioned it in that very first episode with Sarah. She mentions it sitting at the dinner table.
Yep, it's not a coincidence anymore.
It's not. And also, I guess we're making a trend, or this is probably going to come back again, where we're doing these flashbacks because we had that 1960s flashback at the beginning of the previous episode. This might be a thing that they do, is just doing these flashbacks to give information to the audience about what is the virus, what's happening with it, how did it get started, that kind of thing.
Definitely. And it shows some of the strength of changing the media to television because you can build on the core concept of all that shit went down. How did it go down? Where did it go down? What happened in there? Because none of this was in the game. And I think it's cool to have
more world building, basically.
Yeah.
I do think you kind of called it, or that guy that you talked about that was on YouTube that was like, they think the virus was spread by flour, because I think they discussed that the corpse she ends up looking at later, or the cadaver, is from a flower plant.
Yep. So that's evidence.
And the opening scene too, I don't know why, whenever they like zoom in on somebody with glasses, I'm like, oh, we've got a smart person here. Everybody look for the smart guy with the glasses, or lady.
Coded to be intelligent.
But also a nerd, I guess, circa the 80s. I guess she gets approached by, and you identified this guy as maybe like a 3-star general. Like, I didn't really notice what was on his lapels, but he's definitely a upper echelon military person. Just approaches this woman in a cafe and basically abducts her. I do think it's interesting that he just takes her away and she doesn't really protest.
Nobody in the room protests.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like in the US, especially, you know, if you're white, you'd be like, what the fuck, man? You can't take me out of here. Like, where's my rights? I need my lawyer.
Yeah, it was definitely telling that she was in the car when she asked, am I in trouble? She totally went along with it. If she was in trouble, she was okay with that.
Well, it's too late. If you are in trouble, you already got in the car with the person, so you're not going to escape easily.
Yep. So all you need to abduct someone is a uniform, really.
Apparently. Ooh, that's really creepy, though. Imagine. And it is kind of scary how people in uniforms are considered a person of authority. Even if you like get pulled over in a car, you are more likely to just do what that person asks because they're in that position to, you know, send you to jail. So you'll do everything they want you to avoid that consequence.
Yep.
I love watching these TikTok videos of lawyers who get pulled over by cops and they basically know exactly what their rights are and they're talking to the cop and like, no, I don't have to do that. I don't have to get out of the car. Why did you pull me over? Like, they're basically giving the cop the third degree. People in uniforms feel like they have more authority than maybe they do under the Constitution.
And all that said, this was in Indonesia, so.
Yes, so their rights might be different. So then they take her to just a random lab. And one of the other things that I noticed is that there are a lot of women presented as like main characters or in positions of power in this show. We saw it with the Fireflies. The two main head characters are women, and then Tess is a woman, and she's basically, you know, Joel's boss / we don't really know what she is because he just decides not to describe it to Ellie later, but they at least love each other.
Not to get ahead of ourselves.
Yes. But then the other person in the lab is a woman who starts to kind of try to describe to this mycologist, she's a mycologist, what's happening, and the general kind of tells her to no, just let her look at it first. And so we kind of had a good reaction to that scene that I'm going to play here. So they did a special process to prepare it for human skin.
They established her competence so well in that one question.
Yeah, they did.
She identified the type of fungus it was in just a glance, and then complained about the preparation because it apparently would be stupid to use that preparation
for just a
standard
mushroom spore. Yeah, so I thought that was really well said. They did, in like a very short amount of time, showed us that she was a very competent person with mycology, or the study of mushroom spores. This is where we're going to introduce a section called Paul's Pathology, where Paul kind of talks about some sciencey thing, and we'll discuss it together. And for this particular Paul's Pathology, we're going to discuss how real life doesn't really match fiction in a pandemic.
Yeah, so this is a little hand wavier of science compared to talking about spreading of diseases like last one, but we're going to have some fun with it. So as an expert in pandemics, because we all are, because we've lived through one now, I'm sure we can come up with lots of different things to contrast with this reasonable sounding trope in video games. In this story, the military picks up on the grave nature of this threat immediately, and we already have established channels of expertise, and they know exactly who to find to pull into the project, and the person figures it out real quickly, and then they're starting to talk about cures and saying that there's not any chance for a cure because of this reason, and all of that does not match our understanding of how this... I mean, maybe in China they had a much more rapid response to this, but we definitely didn't prove that there even was a problem for months.
We didn't recognize it as a threat and didn't take it seriously as a threat, even though it was kind of obvious in China that things were ramping up and getting very serious. And it is kind of amazing to think how ineffective the US in particular was in establishing just very simple rules to protect people that they didn't want to follow.
Yes. How immediately we diagnose the transmission method. In real life, we were arguing about whether it's aerosolized particles or stuff that you can get from contact with postage stamps or parcels. Like, we had no idea how the pandemic was spreading for the first months of the pandemic, while we were still trying to also establish that it was happening. And in the show, it was immediately, that's a human bite mark. That's how it spreads.
Yeah, and obviously in fiction it is a lot simpler, because in real life COVID did spread in lots of different ways, so it wasn't just like I got bit, I'm sick, right? And again, like you said, we were still trying to establish, is this really a super serious thing that we need to worry about as a country? And I think the scenes in episode 1 where nobody really knows what the fuck is going on is kind of more similar to what happened with our pandemic, where, you know, people don't really know what's going on. They panic. You know, we were out of toilet paper. We were out of like yeast. Like I went to get bread yeast and there was none available because apparently everybody makes bread in the apocalypse. Like,
Just scientific facts.
Yes, exactly. Like, okay, but I was trying to make bread in the apocalypse, so I do think some of that correlates, but this Yakarta scene is really interesting because they like, okay, she figures it out within like 5 seconds, and she goes on to basically say, blow up the whole city, which I think is hilarious that it's coming from a mycologist. That's the one that tells them to do this. She's just like sitting in a living room where she delivers this news of, yeah, murder them all. You know, like, shouldn't it be like in a top secret location where there's several other specialists that they've talked to?
Try and exhaust options.
Yeah, like, don't go first to blow up the city. I do think it's also funny how they always have to find, like, the specific specialists that's so good at their job that they have to find that one person, which in reality, there's just so many people that study these kinds of things that you would want multiple minds to come together that are experts in mycology to figure out, is she actually right? Like, you know, let's test this theory a little longer than one fucking day before we destroy the whole city. But
yeah, let's sequence the genes from this new cordyceps and try and see what's changed, and I don't know, maybe find a way to block some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's put on our thinking caps here. But I do think one of my favorite movies ever that was basically about finding a specialist is that movie Arrival.
Such a good movie.
It's so good. Like, the linguist, that she was just really good at being a linguist and they needed her to be there. And everything about that movie is amazing.
For sure. It's a good story too, like the book. Also, fun fact, I dated someone who was a linguist, and she was always down on the fact that, like, nobody likes linguists. Like, they're scientists and that they do, you know, study these languages and understand concepts about them, but nobody really gives them their day. So Arrival was basically like the hero linguist.
I mean, at least she got that pat on the back that linguists are important. And they are. I mean, our language and our ability to communicate is probably one of the many reasons why we are, like, the apex predator of the entire planet, because, you know, we have the intelligence to tell each other complex theories and ideas and tactics and all the different things in different ways through communication, which animals just don't have that level of communication ability.
Mm-hmm. We have mastered coordination.
Part of that scene that I thought was kind of funny too is they get this mycologist. In my mind, I just imagine she's like a researcher and she looks at mushroom spores. So she's me, like, on a higher level. Like, I'm not very good at mushroom hunting, but, like, you know, you just go out into the woods and you poke around in the dirt and you find mushrooms and you make little spore prints. And they're like, hey, you're a mycologist. Why don't you go into this room with a fucking cadaver and do some studying here of this body?
Yeah, I mean, it's an everyday thing for mycologists to cut open human bodies.
It was just so dumb. So we did have like a pretty good reaction to that. So I'm going to play that as well. Ooh, she's got her fingers in the mouth.
Don't really want to be doing that.
Ugh.
That is a good practical effect.
She's literally shoving scissors all the way down her throat. Ooh, there's that creepy mycelium from... I'm putting my hand out for Paul. That's moving around.
Oh, and it's still growing. Yeah,
the squid mycelium.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of creepy scenes in this episode. For me, the creepiest part of these zombies, which I guess I don't really remember that in the game, but is there weird, gross tentacles that are mycelium tentacles?
I don't think that was in the game. I think that would be iconic and rememberable.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like, great job, TV show runners. That is going to be something that, like, sticks in my mind. Now, anytime I look at mycelium, I'm going to be like, is this going to insert itself into my body? first of all, it's HBO, so it's a full frontal nudity cadaver on the examination table.
Of course, it has to be.
Yeah, and sometimes I get a little annoyed, though HBO does do men and women, I'll say that, but I feel like usually the choice is to do full frontal for a woman and not a guy, because apparently a ding-dong is more like, I don't know, racy than women's genitals, which I think is super dumb. Like, ding-dongs look just as weird as women's bodies parts. Like...
Yeah, I mean, we're all gross structures made of carbon, but you just made me realize they missed a horrible opportunity where they could have had the mycelium coming out of the ding-dong.
Oh my god! That would be so... I can't wait. They are going to do that. I feel like that's going to happen because, I mean, they did another really creepy thing at the end of this episode. It wasn't with a ding-dong, but, like, we'll talk about it. You know what I mean if you've seen the episode with some mouth-on-mouth action, but I think of the two of us, I've actually been exposed to an examination table with a cadaver on it because for occupational therapy, I had to do a actual cadaver lab. So that's way worse than seeing an actual surgery, which I've also done, and a living, breathing person that's knocked out with like their hand getting worked on is like way less creepy and gross than going into a cadaver lab because first of all, that smell of the embalming fluid, and then it's all like brown. The body is like basically desiccated.
Ooh.
In a anatomy lab, you're basically like studying each little muscle, but because they've been dead for a while, like sometimes, especially if it's like a really little muscle, it's hard to find because it's not your regular muscles that are bigger because they're full and strong because you've been working out or whatever. You're like digging in there trying to find the like little teeny muscle, and then like you look up. I always had to put like a little sheet or something over the face until you get to the face part where you have to look at the face muscles, which is also really gross and disgusting. Because then you start seeing it as a person, you know? Like, we did have a fainter, like, at the beginning. It's something that you just have to be like, all right, I gotta get through this, and you have to depersonalize it, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it.
For sure. So I read a Mary Roach book called Stiff, The Curious Life of Human Cadavers.
Yeah, I read that book too.
Yeah, so maybe you have a different opinion, because I remember in that book she said that hands were the weird part.
No, I mean, to me, it's definitely the face. I guess as an OT, we deal with hands a lot. I just thought it was fascinating. Your hands have like so many different tendons that like move your fingers individually, and then there's tendons that move all your fingers together at once. I was just really into identifying all those separate tendons that move the fingers. It wasn't as creepy to look at the hands to me.
Gotcha. All right, so then we get to the next part where Ellie is waking up. They're in one of those ruined buildings that has the perfect amount of nature surrounding where she's sleeping with the light beaming in on her.
I feel like this episode, except for that beginning part that we just talked about, is basically the video game.
100%.
You're watching them in the video game. Like almost every single scene after this. And this opening, it looks just like the color palette that's in the video game. It's like that super bright, vivid green that you get with like spring plants, kind of. But then, like, it's overgrowing all of the, like, dark, crumbling buildings.
Yeah, it has the feel of Tolkien-esque almost. Of, like, you're in nature and then you're suddenly a dryad and everything's pristine and gorgeous. Except not, because it's just a tiny little circle in brutalist hellhole.
Part of Tolkien's stories were all about environmentalism and how Saruman was the opposite of that. Like, he used to be the protector of the woods, and then he learned about technology, and Saruman is kind of a warning to people not to do, like, genetic manipulation, because he manipulates the genetics, basically, of the orcs to make even bigger and better orcs, and he destroys the forest to burn it in furnaces to make weapons for the orc army, and has completely given up on his old way of being like protector of the forest. It's kind of an allegory for the human race's turn to technology for everything.
Beautiful. I bet nobody thought we'd be talking about Lord of the Rings right here.
But it does make sense because there is a juxtaposition of nature versus technology in all post-apocalyptic stuff, because you kind of just see that once we're not part of the picture, nature just kind of takes over and does its thing. Like, we're the ones fucking a lot of things up.
Yeah. So I was trying to bring in a book that I read a long time ago called The World Without Us. And 500 years from now, there'd be no sign of any of our structures visible. Like, it'd all be overgrown and or crumbled. Steel would be mostly just rust. So all that we would be able to find would just be pieces of aluminum.
Well, aluminium. No, just kidding. I'm not
Aluminium.
British. My partner Andrew has decided to also watch Last of Us, and we're watching it after Paul and I watch it together. And he is a contractor, and he was agreeing with me that, you know, some of the destruction of the cities seems likely, but a lot of the concrete stuff, in 20 years, I still don't feel like it would be that broken down. Like, the windows might be broken out, but the concrete itself, pieces wouldn't just start falling off of it like it looks like in the background there.
You'd need an event like an earthquake, just a catalyst to actually cause that kind of damage.
Exactly. It is beautiful in its destruction. Like, I think they did a really great job with all those backgrounds.
Yeah, gorgeous. So yeah, there we were, Ellie waking up, and Joel and Tess are just sitting on chairs staring at her. And so they start to ask her, you know, the questions that really matter to them, because they still don't believe, and rightly, that Ellie is actually immune.
The threat is that we're not good people, and you just heard Joel talk about killing you, so you better be straight with us. So then you gotta wonder, what did Joel and Tess do to survive?
Right, like they've clearly double traded batteries before, because that was stated in the first episode.
Yes. And Tess definitely feels some regret. Maybe not in this scene, but in a later scene for sure. You can tell she regrets maybe some of the things that they did to survive. Paul and I talk about post-apocalypse a lot, even though it's probably not likely. I'm always on the side of a little bit more positive. I feel like people would work together, especially like right at the beginning. It doesn't make sense for people to be so every man for themselves. I'm still a good Samaritan, even though in my mind sometimes I'm like, this is gonna like take time to help this person. I still do it.
If the first thing you think when a disaster hits is like, gotta eat my neighbors, like that's you're a bad person, Alex Jones. And I would rather be around people like you, Marcy.
Yes, like, I just don't understand, like, why is your first instinct, hole up in my house, capture humans and put them in my freezer? Like, why is that, like, your first instinct to become a hermit? Like, I get it, like, resources are important, but ultimately, for us to maintain the style of life that we like to live, you actually need to find people who can do things like make a battery work, get a dam running for electricity if there's nobody else around to do it. Like, some of those people died, you know, smart people who can fix things.
People who can make a barn.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you're totally isolate yourself, you're just gonna live in squalor, and I guess you would need to eat human. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I guess one of the reasons why I really love that movie, Love and Monsters, it's such a good movie. It's my favorite. It's one of my all-time favorite movies, I think, at this point, because the kid goes through this major event where these monsters are crashing down and killing everybody, and then you see them later, and they've created this little colony. There's not that many people in it, but everybody loves each other, and even though they're, like, in close quarters, they figured out how to make it work. And even though he's really bad at stuff, like, he's not good at things, they give him jobs that he could do, and they still love him even though he's not good at stuff. Like, that's what would happen, or I would like to think would happen, is like, you're one of the only humans left, so it doesn't matter if you're a fucking idiot. Like,
you have intrinsic value.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, there's a hero dog in it, and there's a benevolent AI. Everything that everybody else is afraid of, I'm like, yeah, but AI could also be really nice. What if it learned to be empathetic, like by working with nice humans?
Give Skynet a chance, okay?
Yeah, exactly, Paul. Yes, Paul. If people hadn't been so afraid of Skynet and actually taught it to grow up and to learn how to make mistakes and what you do when you make a mistake like it was a kid, then maybe it would be nice.
I think time travel is the correct answer to what to do to fix a mistake.
Kill John Connor. That's the right answer.
As long as I've known you, Marcy, you've been really good at predicting things in movies that I haven't been. And maybe I'm just not the type of person who predicts stuff in movies very often, but you're so accurate. You're like, there's going to be a rape in 10 minutes.
It's true. I do predict a lot during shows. That is something that I do because I've watched so much television and movies. I feel like if there is a show that surprises me, I'm just like, oh my God, this is an amazing show because I didn't predict what the next thing was going to be. And I have definitely developed a maybe cannibalism, but usually cannibalism is like part of the movie. So I know coming into that it's going to happen, but I definitely have a rape sensor. I can tell someone's going to be raped within like 10 minutes of it happening. And I'm like, nope, I'm not going to watch this. I have to step out of the room or close my eyes and my ears. There's like a style of music and a way in which they film. There's very few movies where it's the man being raped, but it does happen, like Prince of Tides. Woo, doggies. That scene... Like, if you've never seen that movie, I will never forget the scene with the inmates. It's crazy. But anyway, and that was a surprise, too. Like, I did not expect it. Do you want me to tell you what it is, the scene?
Sure.
It's pretty rough. It's basically these 4 guys escape from a prison, and it's a mother and her, 3 kids. One's a girl and 2 are young boys, are at home. They break into their home. And every single person gets raped in the house.
Wow.
And it's really fucked up.
Yeah.
And so, that traumatized me, that scene. And let's see, what other rape scene traumatized me? I mean, there's lots of rape scenes in movies, unfortunately. There's a newish movie where everybody goes blind except this one woman. And all the people that originally went blind from this disease got put into this camp, and she's the only sighted person in the camp. But there's still a lot of social dynamics happening where ultimately men start taking women and raping them, and she can see it but nobody else can. And then she ends up, even though she can see things, she has kind of a superpower in that sense, she ends up getting raped too in the movie.
Wow.
And I'm just like, why is this happening? Anyway, I can kind of feel it coming. I knew it was coming in that movie, so I kind of didn't watch it. I never watch it closely. I want to pay attention enough that I know what's going on, but I'm the kind of person that images from movies get seared into my brain. And then, I'll just be sitting there and suddenly, oh, yeah, I remember that one scene, and, creeps me out and weirds me out. So, do you have that, Paul? Do you have that? Sometimes scenes from movies just, stay with you forever?
Yes. I can tell you that I was permanently ruined by a Serbian film. Alex didn't tell me about it when we watched it together, and I don't know why neither of us thought, oh, we could just turn this off. But when the movie was over, Alex turned to me with a look of deep regret and said, I am so sorry. So I remember that more than I remember scenes from the movie, because I think I've intentionally blocked out. Back on track, we've got to the point where Ellie has managed to at least convince Tess that she's being honest, and then she started talking about the key to finding the cure, and the way she said it was the standard Firefly line that had been repeated so much that Joe repeated it at the same time as her, talked over her the same line, because he's heard that bullshit before and he doesn't want to hear it.
Yeah, you can kind of imagine how often Joel and Tess have been fed that line. And Joel and Tess are not part of the Fireflies. So it stands to reason that they've been fucked over so many times by the Fireflies, or had hope and then had hope dashed so many times that they just were done with that group, you know? They are the loners in this world.
Yep. They didn't even have the resources to make sandwiches, according to Ellie.
That was a funny scene where she's eating her sandwich.
Yeah, and she's just really good at digging at them in cute ways. Always asking for a gun and...
Well, like the scene where she's like, says, oh, like when you're turning into a zombie, and then Ellie goes,
and Tess was like, no.
Stop that. And that was like one of the in the previews. I hate it when previews do that, or trailers where they show some of the better comedy moments. Like, leave that for the show. Like, I want to see that when it actually happens. I don't care if you show me the end finale scene, but I want all the comedy to be like something that I see in the moment, okay?
Don't spoil my humor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm personally against trailers. I think the only value they provide for me is to see who the actors are and how they're dressed and what the setting is going to look like. But otherwise, the dialogue is not valuable to me. I don't want to hear or know anything else. Like, I will watch it myself, thank you.
I guess I don't feel exactly the same way as you, partially because when I finally started to obsessively watch shows is when Xena came out. And I was so obsessed with that show that, like, any morsel I could get, back when you actually had to, like, wait a week to see the next episode, another television show, like a couple of days later, they might show a preview for the next Xena. And I would watch these other shit shows just so I could see the preview for the next Xena episode. And I feel like I just got Pavlov dogged to just want to see those previews, even though, like you said, it's actually probably better not to know what's going to happen in the next episodes. Well, the next part of the episode is basically just, again, very game-like. It's the group of Tess, Joel, and Ellie traveling through Boston, going over, you know, big freeways and climbing over cars, and as they're doing their journey, this is where the characters kind of educate us, the audience, about what are the zombies? What happened? Like, Ellie's asking them questions because she's a little bit ignorant of, especially the outside world. She's talking to Tess mostly here in the beginning about what are the zombies like? And there is a part of the scene where Ellie describes how she gets bitten, and in the video game, that scene isn't shown until way later. I would say 3/4 of the way through the game. If you do a bunch of side quests, you see this scene with Ellie and her girlfriend where she gets bit and then her girlfriend dies. Oh, spoilers. Sorry. But in this, she kind of leaves out a big chunk of what happened in that scene. I know Joel and her are gonna have a heart-to-heart.
Yeah, she definitely was omitting pieces of the truth as well. She said that she wanted to go check out the mall, and yeah, it was all I words, not me and my girlfriend, so.
Yeah. I think Ellie is good at protecting herself emotionally a little bit here to try not to get too attached to these guys who are just gonna drop her off.
I mean, they were threatening to kill her that day, so.
I do think it's, again, a good example of, in the video game, often they would have a lot of dialogue as you're walking around in the world. Not so much, I don't think, with the Tess character, but certainly Joel and Ellie, as you're exploring the environment, would have a lot of conversation during that time. And I really thought it was well done conversation.
Yeah, definitely. It kept the pace going. It kind of showed that this is just a day in the life for these urban explorers.
Yes. One of the other things that she asks about is, I've heard that there's zombies that shoot spores out of their heads and have funny looking heads. And Tess is like, yeah, no way, there's nothing like that. And Joel is like completely silent. And I just know he's in his head. It's like, yeah, I'm just not going to tell them because I don't think we'll run into them, but I'll let them know when it's important for them to know.
Yeah. He gave them a look when he was silent. Like, he wasn't just patrolling.
And again, Joel, what I loved about that character is he's kind of like a man of few words. He's that strong, stoic, silent type kind of guy. He's a little bit more verbose, I feel like, here in the television show. He definitely has a lot more conversation, at least with Tess.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going away.
Yeah. During the scene, they're kind of in the outside, and then they start crawling through this building that's been flooded out. Tess needs to kind of leave the group to go open up a pathway for everyone else, and then it's just Joel and Ellie sitting there, and I feel like that's, like, again, another classic scene where Joel is just like, no, I don't want to talk about my personal life. You can't ask me any more questions. And Ellie's trying not to care, but obviously wants to know about Joel.
Mm-hmm. I want to point out that this is the second time you've said that this was a building. And to me, it's funny because it's this iconic hotel scene, the flooded lobby. It was definitely a shot I remembered in the game of this hotel that you have to explore and find a path through. And yeah, they didn't go out of their way to be like, yes, this is from the game. But it seems like you didn't pick that up.
I did.
Okay.
I was just trying to, because I was talking about Joel, I wanted to get to that part. But
Right.
You're absolutely right that it is a very iconic scene from the game. Even Andrew, my partner, who does not play video games anymore, but has, he watched me play some of The Last of Us, said, oh, I remember this scene from the game.
Amazing.
So that's how iconic that scene is in the hotel. I didn't remember that it was a hotel. I certainly remember the piano scene, and like there's a good jump scare with the corpse that she finds, and there's a lot of scenes where Joel has to walk through water, which that's always like a good creepy way to skeeze people out because you don't know what's in that water.
There could be undead there.
Undead or just spores. Can you imagine? Like, if you have any, like, cuts or scrapes, like, certainly you're going to get an infection, but you could also get the infection, the virus.
That's a really good point. I did also want to point out that on the second watch through, she hits the bell and does a fake interaction with the hotel staff. When she hit that bell, I had a minor panic attack.
When we played games together, Paul, I definitely have so much stress. More stress than watching a television show, I'll be honest, because there is a ton of jump scares in video games, and we would play them in like complete darkness. I'm sitting next to you, and music really ramps up my anxiety, and there'd be like that constant dread of, is something gonna jump out at me? Like, you don't know. So I definitely have, certainly more in video games, that feeling of dread, but it got me a couple of times in this episode for sure. Not so much in this moment, maybe because I wasn't paying as much attention to this moment.
Yeah, I mean, everything was fine, but why did she have to make so much noise?
Well, she does that a lot. It's so funny.
Does.
Like, later, Joel's just like, shh, shut the fuck up. Like, God, Ellie. But that's the thing about kids. They're so dumb. But again, I feel like they could have explained it to her. Well, and Tess does in the interrogation room. She explains it to her as like, I'm going to treat you like an adult, and this is what you need to do to survive, basically. So Tess actually does take on that role of trying to give Ellie enough information to where she doesn't die.
Where she makes the smart choices.
Whenever I look at them as a group, their clothing is pretty iconic in general. It's also just normal clothes, which I appreciate. It's not like, I'm in studded leather right now, like in Mad Max. Everybody's wearing leather and weird shit. Like, people are just humans. They're not gonna, like, change how they
Suddenly get
dress.
a bondage fetish.
Yeah, exactly. And why is it that so many people who love bondage live in the apocalypse? I guess because they're basically wearing leather condoms so they don't get infected.
There you go. You answered your own question. Plus, if anyone's going to survive, people who enjoy suffering should, right?
Yeah, masochists.
I am dramatically improperly representing them. But
yes, that's true. No shame for what kind of thing you like to do in your bedroom, whatever it is, as long as it's consensual and you've pre-planned things ahead of time. I feel like in post-apocalyptic movies, they're a little bit overrepresented.
a little bit.
Again, with Tess leaving them in this scene, do you think if it was actually part of the game or a game, would the player character be Tess or would it be Joel and Ellie?
I would definitely want it to be whichever thing is more interesting. So if she's supposed to get hurt or see something important, some kind of clue maybe that could be useful later in the episode, then it would be really important to follow her. If it's just some boring getting around some stuff and opening a door, then maybe it is more fun to be the people just standing there talking and see what they talk about.
Yep, you're right. I think I would want to stay with Joel and Ellie.
I passed the quiz.
So they make it out of the hotel. I think they're kind of on top of the roof. And Tess is like looking down into this alleyway where a bunch of buildings come together. Me and my building talk. And she explains to Ellie this really interesting thing about the zombies where the mycelium can actually spread out underground for like over a mile or more, and then if you step on it in one place, it'll alert zombies way far away to your location and they'll come running towards you. I thought that was super interesting, partially because I recently read a book called Finding the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard, and it's not mycelium, but it talks about how trees in a forest, generally there's like mother trees that are these super old trees that have been there for a really long time, and their root systems connect to a lot of the other trees, and specifically like their saplings, like the little plants that are from the acorn or something that has fallen that's from that tree and started growing up into a new plant. And the mother tree, if something happens to it, like if it gets burned down and it's starting to die, instead of bringing all of its resources back to itself, it will actually start sending out resources to only the saplings that are genetically the same as itself, because they're all kind of connected by their root systems and by mycelium networks. And I thought that was incredibly fascinating, and that also there's trees that are connected through their root system, that if a bunch of trees or copse of trees in one area start getting infected by a fungus or a virus or something, it will actually send signals to trees of the same type like a mile away, and those trees will start creating defenses against the infection that's like a mile away.
And a mile away is huge warning.
Yes, it is.
On that kind of scale, yeah.
This kind of thing is actually scientifically possible. I think it's kind of fun to think about it in that way, because you would think, that wouldn't happen. But we learned from last episode from Paul that those mycelium actually do come out of the ant mouths, which is fucking disgusting.
Horrifying.
And then that you can, in fact, plants can send these kinds of messages to their saplings. And so basically the mycelium is just sending a message to its fruiting spore that, hey, get over there, because you need to infect something else to create more spores. Here. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. So we find ourselves back on the ground at some point. Maybe it was just a transition. I feel like I wasn't super clear on the navigation at this part of the show.
Agreed. I wasn't really like, how did they end up getting back down on the ground? I don't know, but they did.
But I love that the first thing Joel does after we get this explanation of the communication at a distance is he smashes one of these root-looking things to see if it's broken or not.
Yeah, he's such an idiot. Like, you're the one that knows the most about this shit, and you're just tromping around with your big Joel boots, like, knocking off fungus spores. Like, don't get that in your face.
Yeah, at least wear a mask, dude. And so then they get the idea that they should go through the museum because there's that huge mass of writhing bodies through their standard route. And we get to the museum. Once again, like, handed to them, they have beautiful, horrifying fungal displays in this place where, it's had time to settle.
Yeah, the door of the museum, looks amazing. Like the art, it's basically just fungus growing up onto the door, but it looks beautiful. And I am kind of having a hard time. There's some amazing creature effects, but then sometimes I'll do like a zoom in on the mushroom heads of the zombies, and I'm like, it kind of looks a little bit cheap. Like, I don't know, it doesn't look super good when they zoom in. You can certainly tell that it's like a prosthetic. Or maybe it's CG and it just looks like a prosthetic. I don't know.
I recently learned a term in the artist community. There's like different versions of it based off of the situation, but in computer generation, it's frame fucking. And literally what it is you've got a stupid boss or a stupid person who's like telling you what they want the scene to do. And so they'll just like quibble over little details in the scene and just make you waste a bunch of time re-rendering stuff.
Yeah.
It's possible that when there's suboptimal scenes like that some idiot was doing some frame fucking.
Ah, interesting. It's actually getting better in TV shows. I can't tell as much what is CG and what isn't CG. But I think they're coming back to doing like kind of a half and half for things, you know?
For sure. I think maybe by playing so many video games of various quality, I don't mind the bad CGI if the story's there. But I could see how that's not the same for everyone.
Well, I think video games are different too because there's nothing about a video game is real.
For sure. So they go into the museum. They're in a showing room, and this is when the clickers start to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they've got to do the most iconic Last of Us thing possible, crouch, sneak around, making as little noise as possible so that they don't alert the clicker. Because in the game, those things will kill you, and you have limited resources to actually kill them back. So avoiding them is always the best idea. So here we are in this tense, quiet scene where the loudest thing you can hear is the clicker clicking around.
And we actually have our reaction to the clicker scene. Oh, this is a classic scene. Joel's holding his flashlight up to his neck, trying to get bullets in his gun, trying to be quiet. Ooh, and the clicker's right next to him. Ooh!
They're so ugly.
Some good creature effects.
Mm-hmm.
And they're definitely practical effects from what I can tell. So the clicker comes up to him. It's like right next to his side. Then it turns around and goes around the display that he's hiding behind. And he's still trying to get his gun full of bullets. And then the clicker kind of attacks him from behind. And he shoots at it. But he does a classic Marcy move, which is, I should call him Dick Shot Joel, but it's actually called a Dick Shot Marcy, because he shoots him kind of in the stomach dick area and doesn't get him in the head at all. There's definitely a couple of scenes where they're fighting the zombies, and Tess shows up out of nowhere and kind of saves them with the classic hatchet to the face.
Classic. I do think that the perspective of the game is part of the reason for some of your dick shots. I was thinking about it, and so the camera view is, you can control it, but it's largely over the shoulder, looking at a downward angle. And so when you're swerving over to find the new threat, you're not looking in the up and down so much as just where is it. And so it's super easy to be aimed right at the crotch of whatever you spot.
I mean, but I lived through the game by basically just shooting guys in the dick. So, like, zombies in the dick, bad guys in the dick, like, they'd still die when you hit them there, so. Which
I think would happen to people, too.
As you age, you know, even in games, it's a young kid's game, man. You just don't have as good a reaction time. And I'm also a jump scare, so, like, if I'm playing and then something jumps out at me, I'm like, oh, and I'm, like, not actually able to react by killing it. I just freak out, basically.
Yeah, it's the classic fight, flight, or freak out.
Yeah. I know. Do you know what your reactions to scary things are?
Freeze.
I know what mine is. Mine is run.
Nice.
I flight.
I don't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but I was in a room that didn't have windows. I used to work in a basement, so it was probably there. But like the power went out, and so the lights went out, and my first thing that I did was crouch, because if anyone was going to go after me, I wanted to be a different height. And it was like, why am I thinking that? But yeah, I freeze and listen and crouch.
Well, that's hilarious. One time I was walking with my friend Lou, and we were like on a hike, and I was gonna help him hang a bear bag. And we're like walking along, and this was in the Smoky Mountains where there's tons of black bears and they're super used to people. So they have like no fear of humans. So we're walking along the trail, going to where we are supposed to hang up our bear bag. And I hear to the left of me, coming from a bush, this like a big growl.
Wow.
I don't even remember what happened, but the next thing I knew, I was like a mile away from Lou down the trail, and Lou was like, "What the fuck, Marcy?" But like I had just booked it. One moment I was just standing there talking to Lou, the next I was like 350 yards down the trail.
And Lou is still alive, so...
He is still alive, and he did hang that bear bag. I was too far away to get there, so... I do think that was one of the good things about The Last of Us, was that you did have limited resources in it. And I remember you having to be really careful with whether or not you're going to attack one of these zombies. And it was the smartest route always to try to sneak around the zombies, because they were hard to kill. And I think they illustrate that in this scene. I think it's just one clicker in the room, and it nearly takes all of them out.
Yes. And I hope that there will be a scene in the future where they're throwing a brick, because that was also something that you did all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because bricks were everywhere, and you didn't have to keep them in your backpack. You just pick it up and throw it. And
yeah, to distract the clicker. That's right. You would pick up the brick, and you would toss it away from you, and then the clicker would go towards the brick, and then you could go around the clicker. Yep.
But another cool thing about the inventory system is it made you make hard choices. For example, alcohol, like isopropyl alcohol, you could either use to make a Molotov, which will help you kill multiple clickers or other enemies, or a first aid kit because you don't want to die. The limited resources and the fact that you have to choose that way was something that drew me to the game in the first place.
Yeah, and it's probably like best for a gamer like me, because I am definitely a hoarder. And so when there's games where you can like collect every possible thing, I'll always end up completely over encumbered. For example, in Fallout, I'll be like, I just need this one more thing, and I'll like add it to my inventory. I'm like, I'm totally encumbered now, so I guess I'll just pick up every single fucking item and then take 30 minutes of real time to walk back to the settlement, because it won't let you fast travel back to the settlement, just so that I can sell a piece of leather for 2 bottle caps.
Gotta maximize your caps. So you would probably really hate it. I've seen a couple games where if you get to a certain level of encumbrance, you can't move at all.
Yeah, that's fucked up, man. Like, I want to be able to carry as much shit as I want. I want to be that lady from Labyrinth with her giant backpack full of toys that basically overtakes her entire body.
She seems
that
really
would be
nice.
Me. I feel like that would be my NPC in like Fallout. Or there's that post-apocalyptic movie, The Blood of Heroes, is one of my favorites. It's got Rutger Hauer in it. There's a group of people that travel around and they play this dog game.
This is the wardrobe guy, huh?
Yeah, and he wears a giant fucking wardrobe on his back as a backpack. I love that.
Cool movie, and I always forget the name. Blood of Heroes, you say?
The Blood of Heroes, yeah.
Hell yeah. It really, to me, feels like an unofficial Mad Max movie.
It's an interesting take on that genre.
Anyhow, our beloved characters make it out of this fight with the clicker, which led to lots of running around and some screaming, and unfortunately, at least one person got bit.
I had predicted before we knew that she's actually been, it looks like she's been bitten, because she's like walking super fast to get to the drop zone, and she's starting to give Joel all these like speeches about, you know, how you have to be more positive about this, Joel, like maybe there is a cure. She's already kind of in that moment starting to try to get him to realize that he needs to care more about Ellie.
Yeah, and to actually see this thing through, because at this point, like, Tess is a full believer, because Ellie was also bit in this scene, right where her previous injury was, and so we could contrast later on how infected one is versus the other.
They walk to the Firefly base where they were supposed to drop Ellie off. Joel notices that it's pretty quiet. He makes them stay. He goes up to the truck that's outside the building that they were supposed to meet them at, and it's completely empty, and they see like some blood spots going into the building, and Tess is just like, fuck this, let's go in there. And so she runs in there. All of the people are dead. Joel explains to Ellie that, looks like somebody got infected and then everybody just kind of murdered each other.
Such a great investigator.
Yeah. Because she's like, oh, did they die some other way? And he's like, nah, this is how they died. We learn that Tess has been bitten, and she's, again, encouraging Joel to protect Ellie. I just want to comment again on how, like, amazing this actress is. Like, in her final moments, like, this woman's gonna die. She loves Joel, but knows he doesn't feel the same way as her. And so she doesn't waste any words on any of that bullshit. She's just like, this is our time to do something good for the world. And she tells Joel to save who you can save, which is the survivor's motto, I would imagine.
But just before that, she said, damn it, Joel, I've never asked anything from you. I am asking you this one time. That's pretty heavy. She's done so much for him, and she's cashing in all her chips to do save who you can save.
And he does it for her. He steps up and, well, steps in line, I guess I should say, and does what she asks him to do. She decides that she's going to burn the whole place down because they've alerted the zombies with the Mycelium network that they're here, and they know the zombies are coming because they can hear them, like, screaming.
I thought it was funny that Joel walked to the front door, looked out, it's like, yeah, it's all of them.
Again, a man of few words. Here they come. But we get that classic scene. She's dumped some gasoline on the ground. Joel grabs Ellie and runs off with her. And first, I guess I wanted to know your thoughts before I go into, like, the lighter scene about Ellie's response to leaving Tess. Do you think that was probably realistic, or?
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted on that, because it happened really fast, and Ellie didn't have a lot of time to know these people. Yeah, I could see that if Ellie had a choice, Tess would have survived and Joel would have died.
Yes.
So her not wanting to leave Tess kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Tess was the one that was interacting with her the most and giving her the most information and was kind of protecting her because she wanted to protect the cure for the virus. I do think Ellie would still understand, because she has seen people die from the bite.
Yeah.
That she would recognize that there's no way that you can save Tess. Like you said, I can understand just being surprised and not wanting to leave someone behind in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's conflicting, and I could see it both ways. And if Tess was bit somewhere easier, you know, it might have been, let's just chop off her hand. But not much you can do with the neck wound that she had.
Right, and I always keep referring back to that one poster that I saw at the very first episode where there's a cordyceps infection chart, and she actually lasted a lot longer than most people do, because it says when you get bit in the neck on that chart, you last 5 to 15 minutes.
Oh, shit.
And then if you get bit on the torso, you have 2 to 8 hours, and if you get bit on the leg or the foot, you have 12 to 24 hours.
Wow.
Maybe it was only 15 minutes to the hideout, but I don't think so. It seemed like it was longer in the show to get there from the museum.
Yeah, there were some transitions, so we can't know for sure, but they were on a roof and then they were on the ground in totally different building.
I bet the showrunners didn't expect somebody to write down the actual infection times.
I love that you did that.
Tess is holding a lighter. We get the classic trying to light the lighter and not being able to light the lighter scene. And as Andrew says, again, my partner, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Just take a second and light it. Calm the fuck down. I mean, obviously you can't. She's justifiably nervous and basically turning into a zombie.
Quicker than she wants with that smooch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So let's go to the final reaction clip from when we originally watched this scene, which is super gross and disgusting.
Are you one of us? Let me make out with my
I really hate
mouth.
those tendrils that come out of their mouth.
Oh.
They make out with you to further infect you?
I never saw that.
That was gross.
I think Tess will be okay, though.
I think she's going to be all right. She'll be fine. We'll come back for her. The mycelium makeouts, that's going to be what I call it from now on, are super gross. Like, she's standing there and the zombie runs up to her. Like, why would it do this, first of all? And it puts its hands on her shoulder, and she kind of leans into it a little bit, I feel like, that she's going for it as well, because maybe she's just infected, and the point is to connect with this other creature, but they make out with those stupid, gross mycelium tentacles.
Maybe Joel's just a really bad kisser.
She's like, finally, someone who can kiss me the way that I want. I guess, do you have any theories about why they are doing that? Why, if she's already infected, would it decide to also go up to her and do this?
Not any big theories. I think that maybe they just periodically do that to each other to, like, exchange information or something.
I was wondering if it's doing this to her because you know how some of the zombies have that weird spore brain?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's making her into like a spore brain zombie and she'll come back later as one of the big bad zombies.
Ooh, Boss Tess.
Boss Tess.
I don't think the show should be at all obligated to this, but if I recall correctly, the story in the game was basically a linear progression. Every infected will become a clicker if they sit for long enough.
Right.
That wouldn't be fun in the show, and so I think they should abandon that and have like special methods to become clickers. Maybe if you die in a well, you become a water clicker, something like that.
Yeah, I think Joel described in the first episode, some people don't become animated at all, and there's really old ones, and then there's not. At least for Joel, he doesn't really understand what makes one an older zombie and what ones just die off.
True. And he's not a mycologist, so.
He isn't. Gotta get to Yakarta.
That's the only way to know.
Even though I really liked Tess, I wasn't super emotionally connected to like seeing her die. I wasn't incredibly upset or anything. And I think it's the fault of that fucking mycelium makeout. I feel like I would have felt that death more if that hadn't happened, because then I was just so focused on how weird that was that I couldn't focus on the emotional moment of her dying in that scene.
Yeah, so maybe it was a bit of a 1-2 punch, because I hated the lighter not lighting. It was just too long, too many false clicks. Like,
exactly.
They extended it out for dramatic reasons, and that was to Tess's detriment. So.
And literally, you have grenades there. Just pick up a grenade and pull the pin.
Yeah.
Like, why would you stand there with a lighter? Andrew also said, sorry, I'm going to bring Andrew into this a lot because he's good at talking things through for me, but he said that the color of the liquid that she poured out had like a pink tinge, like it was diesel. So diesel doesn't really light from just putting a lighter in it.
But also you just said pink, and we've already established that pink is an important color.
Yeah, it is. I said that. I was like, oh, pink is a important color. I wonder if that means something. It could, because she died, and it's all related to Joel's memory. So now he's going to have a pink memory, another memory to drink his life away with, of Tess dying for him and Ellie.
The one that got away.
So basically the episode ends with Joel and Ellie escaping the building and then zooms out with Ellie just sort of standing in front of the building where the building explodes.
Yeah, and the explosion was kind of mediocre, but the emotional impact, I don't know. It seemed like Ellie was very upset.
She was, yeah. I mean, I wasn't incredibly emotionally impacted by that death, and I feel like I should have been. I feel like the episode did really well up until that very, like, kind of end scene where they missed the appropriate tone that you should have gotten with a death of a main character like that.
Yeah.
We did get, like, a little sneak peek. We talked about, well, you talked about how you didn't like sneak peeks too much, but I'm really happy to see that Ron Swanson is in the upcoming episode. Or Nick Offerman. He's like one of my favorite actors. And it's hard not to see any kind of spoilers, so it looks like there's going to be another big emotional punch coming up in this third episode, but I have no idea what it's about. Wow. So I'm excited to see Nick Offerman. And like Tess did mention two guys. She was like, take Ellie to so-and-so, and which I imagine is Nick Offerman and the other person that's in that scene. So
sudden flashbacks. Yeah, okay. Yes. I know what the episode's going to be about.
Well, don't tell me.
Shh.
Shh, quiet.
Oh, I also because you said that Andrew says slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I love the idea of Andrew just appropriating every famous quote and you think it's him.
That would be fair, because like he reads all of the internet and I'm like, huh? Did you come up with that? And he's like, no, I read it somewhere.
And then you're just like, no, Andrew came up with it.
Yeah, it's Andrew's now.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Andrew.
All right, well, I think that's a good end to the show. We'll see you on the next episode, episode 3. Thank you for joining us. You can email us at idleridepodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Goodbye.